I came to my son's house without warning on Thanksgiving 2025. He opened the door, looked straight through me, and said, "Who invited you, old woman? This holiday is only for family. Leave." I left without a word. "I'm glad you're here with me. Please stay until the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. I want to see how far this story travels." For 63 years, I believed I knew my son. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm a retired elementary school teacher, a widow of 8 years, the kind of woman who bakes pies on Sundays and volunteers at the local library in Portland, Maine. My life had settled into something quiet and predictable after my husband died lonely. Yes, but decent. Brad was my only child. He lived 3 states away with his wife Kimberly and my grandchildren, Emma and Jack. At least, that was the story I told myself on long winter evenings when the house felt too big and the silence too loud. Brad had always been a good boy, or so I believed. He called every few weeks. He sent birthday cards. He visited once or twice a year with the kids. That was enough to keep my hope alive. Enough to convince me that distance hadn't changed who we were to each other. The first crack appeared in October. I called to wish Emma a happy 10th birthday. Kimberly answered. Her voice was tight, impatient, nothing like the warm politeness I was used to. "Margaret, we're busy right now. Brad will call you back." The line went dead. He never called. 3 days later, I tried again. Voicemail. I left cheerful messages, the kind grandmothers leave. I talked about the leaves changing color, about Mrs. Peterson's ridiculous cat next door. I told myself I didn't want to sound needy. I didn't want to be a burden. Silence. Then the photos started appearing. My neighbor's daughter had helped me set up Facebook years earlier so I could see pictures of the grandchildren. I didn't scroll often, but that week, something pulled me back. Emma's birthday party. A big one. Bounce house. Tables covered with food. Dozens of children laughing in Brad's backyard. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't even known it was happening. I scrolled further. Halloween photos. Emma dressed as a princess. Jack in a superhero costume. The caption read, "Best Halloween ever, with our whole family." I counted the faces. Kimberly's parents, her sister, cousins I barely knew. Everyone was there except me. No mention, no explanation, not even a tag. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen, my hands trembling. Had I done something wrong? Said something offensive? I replayed every conversation, every visit, searching for a moment I might have crossed a line. There was nothing. By mid-November, the silence had become unbearable. Thanksgiving was approaching, and surely they wouldn't exclude me from Thanksgiving. Families didn't do that. Sons didn't do that. I didn't call ahead. Part of me was afraid of the answer. Instead, I bought a bus ticket to Massachusetts. I gathered ingredients for my pecan pie, the one Brad loved since childhood. I told myself this would be a surprise, a happy one, a mother showing up for her family on a day meant for family. The 6-hour ride was filled with hope and dread tangled together. I practiced my smile. I imagined Emma and Jack running to hug me. I imagined Brad laughing, saying I should have told him I was coming. Their house looked exactly as I remembered. White shutters, perfect lawn. Cars filled the driveway. Warm light glowed through the windows. I could smell turkey. I could hear laughter. I knocked. Brad opened the door with a wine glass in his hand. His smile vanished the second he saw me. His eyes went cold, so cold I barely recognized him. "Mom," he said sharply, "what are you doing here?" "I came for Thanksgiving," I said softly. "I brought your favorite." "Who invited you?" Kimberly appeared behind him, irritation written across her face. The conversation inside the house stopped. I could feel eyes on me. "This holiday is only for family," Brad said loudly. "You can't just show up unannounced. Leave." The words hit like a slap. I looked past him, searching for my grandchildren. I didn't see them. I saw Kimberly's parents sitting stiffly at the dining table, pretending not to stare. "But Brad," I whispered, "I'm your mother." "Go home," he shouted. Neighbors' curtains twitched. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the pie. For the first time in my life, I felt completely invisible, like an intruder, like something shameful. I turned and walked away without another word. That night, I sat alone in a cheap roadside motel, staring at the uneaten pecan pie on the dresser. My phone stayed silent. No apology, no explanation. As dawn broke gray and cold, something shifted inside me. Beneath the hurt, beneath the disbelief, anger began to burn. This wasn't over. I barely slept that night. The motel room smelled of old smoke and harsh detergent, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brad's face at the door, cold, distant, unrecognizable. By morning, my grief had settled into something sharper. Questions. Too many questions. What had I lost? The obvious answer was my son. Somewhere between the boy who used to wait for me after school and the man who called me old woman, I had been erased. But it went deeper than that. I had lost time, years I could never get back. Emma and Jack's lives had been moving forward without me. Birthdays, holidays, school events. When had I last really seen them? Last Christmas? No, the Christmas before that, almost 2 full years. 2 years of silence. I checked out of the motel early and sat in a small coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug of terrible coffee. I opened my laptop. If I was going to understand what had happened, I needed facts, not guesses. I went through Brad's social media page slowly, post by post, scrolling back 2 full years. I kept a small spiral notebook beside me and wrote everything down. Dates, captions, names, tagged in photos. The pattern emerged quickly. Family gatherings where I should have been present but wasn't. Holidays celebrated with Kimberly's parents. Birthdays credited to Grandma Susan with glowing praise. So grateful for Grandma Susan's help. The kids adore Grandma Susan. My name never appeared. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. I had been edited out of their story like a mistake someone didn't want remembered. I wasn't just absent, I was being replaced. That realization made my stomach tighten. Then I called my bank. I had set up automatic transfers years earlier, back when Brad mentioned wanting to start an education fund for the kids. $500 a month. Nothing extravagant, but steady, responsible. Something a grandmother does because she wants her grandchildren to have opportunities. The teller confirmed the balance. $18,000. Every payment had gone through without interruption. I sat there staring at the number, my fingers numb. Had Brad been taking my money while quietly cutting me out of his children's lives? Had he accepted my help while deciding I no longer deserved to exist in their world? The thought made me feel sick. By mid-morning, my notebook was half full. Notes, dates, proof. What I had once dismissed as distance now looked like something else entirely: control. I knew then that I couldn't handle this alone. My friends back in Portland were kind, but they were my age. They had their own struggles, their own families drifting away in different directions. I needed someone objective, someone who understood situations like this and wouldn't brush it off as just family drama. That's when I remembered Janet Morrison. We had taught together at Riverside Elementary for 15 years. She'd been sharp, compassionate, impossible to intimidate. 5 years ago, she'd left teaching to become a social worker, specializing in elder affairs. We still exchanged Christmas cards, but we hadn't spoken in person in a long time. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes before dialing. What if she didn't remember me? What if she thought I was overreacting? The line rang. Morrison Family Advocacy Services. A warm, professional voice answered. This is Janet. Janet, I said, my voice unsteady. This is Margaret Hayes. We used to teach together at Riverside. There was a pause. Margaret, she said gently. Of course I remember you. What's going on? Something in her tone broke me open. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt seen. I took a deep breath. My son is trying to cut me out of my grandchildren's lives, I said, and I don't know what to do. Then start from the beginning, Janet replied, and tell me everything. I closed my notebook, feeling a small spark of something I hadn't felt since Brad slammed the door. Hope. Janet met me the following Monday at her office. It was warm and calm in a way my life hadn't been for weeks. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, shelves lined with books on family law and elder rights. She poured me a cup of tea and sat across from me with a legal pad. Her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp. Start from the beginning, she said. When did you first feel something was wrong? So I told her everything. The unanswered calls, the birthday party I hadn't known about, the Halloween photos, the Thanksgiving door slam. I told her about the money, every transfer, every month, without fail. As I spoke, Janet wrote quickly, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked directly at me. Margaret, she said, what you're describing is called grandparent alienation. The words landed heavily. It's more common than people think, she continued, and it can be devastating. The good news is that Massachusetts does recognize grandparent visitation rights. The bad news is that it's complicated. We'll need evidence. A lot of it. I didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do. We spent hours building a foundation. Janet had me pull up my call logs, emails, and social media screenshots. We created a timeline that showed the slow but deliberate deterioration of contact. She photographed my phone records, dozens of unanswered calls. She asked about my relationship with Emma and Jack before the silence. Do you have proof? She asked. Photos? Letters? Anything that shows you were an active part of their lives? I nodded immediately. Boxes in my attic, birthday cards they made me, photos from visits, a quilt I sewed for Jack when he was born. Good, she said. That matters. Then she leaned back in her chair. The next step is a formal letter, Janet explained. Professional, calm, non-accusatory. We'll request regular visitation and ask for an explanation of why contact was severed. How they respond will tell us everything. Part of me hoped Brad would see it as a wake-up call. That he would call, apologize, say this had all been a misunderstanding. Another part of me, the part that remembered his eyes on Thanksgiving, knew better. The letter went out that Wednesday, by certified mail. I knew Brad would receive it by Friday. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Brad's name lit up the screen. My hands trembled as I answered. What the hell do you think you're doing? He shouted. You sent a legal letter to our house? Are you out of your mind? Brad, I said carefully. I just want to see my grandchildren. You have no right, he snapped. They're our kids, not yours. I'm not threatening anyone, I said. I'm asking. Kimberly is furious. Her parents are furious, he continued. You've turned a simple family boundary into a legal issue. A boundary. That's what he called erasing me from existence. Brad, I said, my voice shaking. Please just tell me what I did wrong. Why won't you let me see Emma and Jack? This is exactly why, he exploded. You're suffocating. You're controlling. You've always been like this. The words stung, but then he said something that froze me completely. Besides, he added, we told the kids you moved away. They think you're living in Arizona or something. It's easier that way. They don't ask questions. I couldn't breathe. You lied to them? I whispered. There was a pause. I heard Kimberly's voice in the background, sharp, angry. Brad, hang up. Don't tell her anything else. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding. They hadn't just cut me out. They had rewritten me, turned me into a woman who abandoned her grandchildren. I didn't cry. I opened my notebook and wrote everything down, word for word, date and time, at the top of the page. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I called Janet within minutes. My voice was steadier than I expected. The shock had settled into something hard and focused. He admitted it. I told her. Brad said they told the kids I moved to Arizona. He said it was easier. Janet went quiet for a moment. Then she said, write down everything he said, word for word, date it. This is important, Margaret. Very important. I already had. Within 2 weeks, we filed the formal petition for grandparent visitation rights. It included the timeline, my documentation, bank records, and statements from 2 close friends who could attest to my relationship with Emma and Jack before the silence. The paperwork felt heavy in my hands, not just pages, but years of my life, condensed into evidence. Brad and Kimberly had 30 days to respond. They responded in 1 week. I was in my kitchen making dinner when I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Brad's SUV. My heart dropped. He stepped out, followed by Kimberly, and then a man I didn't recognize carrying a briefcase. They walked toward my front door like people who believed they were still in control. I opened the door but left the chain lock on. We need to talk, Brad said, his voice tight. If you're here about the petition, I replied, you can speak to my lawyer. The man with the briefcase stepped forward. Mrs. Hayes, I'm Richard Patterson, attorney for Brad and Kimberly Sherman. We'd like to discuss this matter before it escalates. There's nothing to discuss, I said. Kimberly pushed forward, her face carefully arranged into concern. Margaret, please, let's not do this through courts. Think about the children. The children you lied to about me? I asked. Brad's jaw clenched. The lawyer cleared his throat. My clients are prepared to offer a compromise. He explained it slowly, like a favor. 4 visits per year, holidays or birthdays, supervised, at their convenience. In exchange, I would withdraw the petition and agree not to pursue further legal action. 4 times a year. After being erased for 2 years. No, I said simply. Kimberly's expression hardened. You're being unreasonable. You're offering me scraps, I replied. The answer is no. Brad stepped closer to the door, his voice dropping. You want to play hardball, Mom? Fine. We'll tell the court you're unstable, that you showed up unannounced on Thanksgiving, that you're obsessive, controlling. Kimberly smiled thinly. A lonely old woman who can't let go, the lawyer added, almost politely. If you persist, you could end up with nothing. No contact at all. I looked at my son, really looked at him. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no shame. Get off my property, I said quietly. If you want to threaten me, do it through the court. They left, arguing by the car. My legs gave out once the door closed. I sank to the floor and cried for the first time since Thanksgiving. 3 days before Christmas, a package arrived. Inside was an expensive leather photo album filled with recent pictures of Emma and Jack. A note in Kimberly's handwriting asked me to drop the petition in exchange for quarterly updates. I stared at the photos until my chest ached. Then I closed the album. This was bait, and I wasn't taking it. I didn't respond to the album. I didn't call. I didn't text. I forwarded everything to Janet and kept my silence. That silence was harder than I expected. Every instinct in me wanted to reach out, to say something, anything that might bring my grandchildren closer. But Janet was clear. They're testing you, she said. If you bend now, they'll know exactly how to control you. So I documented instead. Every voicemail, every email, every attempt to soften their tone after the threats failed. Brad left a message saying he'd been too harsh. Kimberly sent an email explaining how hard this had been on them. I wrote dates in my notebook and resisted the urge to reply. What I needed wasn't their bargaining. It was strength. I found it in unexpected places. The first was Carol Henderson from my book club. We met for coffee one afternoon, and for the first time, I told someone outside this mess the full truth. She listened quietly, her hands wrapped around her cup, her eyes damp. Then she surprised me. My daughter cut me off from my grandchildren 3 years ago, she said. Over politics. I got tired. I gave up. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Don't make my mistake, Margaret. Don't let them erase you. A few days later, my neighbor Tom Bradshaw wandered over while I was sorting paperwork on my porch. He adjusted his glasses, glanced at the documents, and sighed. I spent 30 years as a family court judge, he said. I've seen cases like yours. Good grandparents pushed out for power and control. He looked me straight in the eye. With your documentation? You've got a real chance. Those words stayed with me. Janet also encouraged me to join an online forum for grandparents fighting alienation. Hundreds of stories poured in, people just like me. Some had won. Some had lost. Some had waited years to be reunited when grandchildren became adults and learned the truth. One message stuck with me. Document everything. And don't give up. Christmas came and went quietly. Brad called twice on Christmas Day. I let both calls go to voicemail. His tone shifted from gentle to irritated. They were realizing I wouldn't break. The court date was set for January 28th. 3 weeks before that date, Brad and Kimberly came again, this time without a lawyer. I saw their car pull into my driveway and almost didn't answer. But Brad looked different, smaller, tired. His shoulders slumped as he walked toward the door. Mom, he said when I opened it. His voice cracked. Please, can we just talk? No lawyers, just family. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. They sat on my couch, the same couch where Brad used to do homework, where I'd read him bedtime stories. Kimberly's eyes scanned the room. Brad stared at the floor. I never wanted this, he said. It got out of control. Then why did it happen? I asked quietly. He glanced at Kimberly. She nodded for him to continue. We were trying to protect our family, he said. Kim's mom is very involved with the kids. Having 2 grandmothers competing for attention felt confusing. So you erased me instead, I said. We were going to ease you back in, Kimberly added smoothly. Once the kids were older, you told them I moved to Arizona, I said flatly. Brad winced. That was wrong. I admit it. But we can fix this if you drop the court case. Then he leaned forward, urgency creeping into his voice. Do you want your grandchildren growing up knowing their grandmother dragged their parents through court? The manipulation was breathtaking. What I want, I said slowly, is regular, unsupervised time with my grandchildren. And the truth. Kimberly stood up. You're being selfish. No, I replied. I'm being honest. Her mask slipped. We don't want you around, she snapped. The kids don't need you. Brad said nothing. Get out, I whispered. They left without another word. I picked up my phone and called Janet. They showed me who they really are, I said, and I'm ready. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Oak paneling, fluorescent lights, a tired-looking judge with reading glasses perched low on her nose. Judge Patricia Morrison had a reputation fair, but relentless when children were involved. Brad and Kimberly sat to the left with their lawyer. Janet and I sat to the right. Behind me, Carol from my book club had come for support, along with Tom Bradshaw, my neighbor and former family court judge. Their presence steadied me. Brad wouldn't look at me. Kimberly stared straight ahead, her posture perfect, her suit immaculate. They looked like responsible parents. I looked like what I was, a 63-year-old grandmother in a department store dress, fighting for something that should never have been taken. The hearing began. Their lawyer spoke first. He painted me as overbearing, intrusive, unable to respect boundaries. He described my Thanksgiving visit as proof of instability, a woman who showed up unannounced and frightened her son's family. He spoke of happy children, a stable home, and a grandmother who refused to let go. I listened without reacting. Janet had prepared me for this. Let them talk, she'd said. Don't interrupt, don't defend. Truth doesn't need volume. When it was Janet's turn, her voice was calm and precise. Your Honor, this is a case about a grandmother who had a consistent, loving relationship with her grandchildren until she was systematically erased through deception and manipulation. Then the evidence began. Call logs showing unanswered attempts, emails never replied to, social media posts celebrating whole family gatherings where I was conspicuously absent, bank records showing $18,000 transferred for the children's education while I was being cut off. Brad testified next. He spoke about feeling pressured, about my constant calls, about wanting space. Kimberly echoed him, claiming my Thanksgiving appearance had traumatized the children, though she never explained why Emma and Jack hadn't been present. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, with my back straight and my hands steady. Janet guided me through my testimony slowly. My relationship with Emma and Jack, the visits, the cards, the phone calls, the money, the silence. And what happened on Thanksgiving 2025? Janet asked. I told the truth. Every word. And did your son explain why you were not welcome? Yes. He said the holiday was only for family. He called me old woman and told me to leave. There was a murmur in the courtroom. The judge made a note. Mrs. Hayes, Janet continued, have you had contact with your grandchildren in the past 2 years? No. And do you know why? Yes. The room felt suddenly very still. Brad admitted they told the children I had moved to Arizona. Their lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection. Hearsay. Janet smiled slightly. Your Honor, we have Mrs. Hayes's contemporaneous written account of the phone call, dated and detailed, along with phone records confirming the call. I'll allow it, the judge said, looking directly at Brad. Continue. Janet held up another document. Exhibit Y, a letter offering quarterly photographs of the children in exchange for withdrawing the petition. The judge read it slowly, then looked up. Mr. Sherman, did you send this? Brad shifted. We were trying to compromise. A compromise involves actual visitation, the judge replied sharply. Then she leaned forward. Mr. Sherman, did you tell your children their grandmother moved to Arizona? Silence. Answer the question. Brad's face drained of color. Emma asked where her grandmother was, and You lied to your daughter, the judge finished. That is parental alienation. She ordered a court-appointed child psychologist to interview Emma and Jack. 2 weeks later, Janet called me. Margaret, sit down. Dr. Rebecca Chen's report was devastating. Emma cried during the interview, admitting she believed I'd moved away without saying goodbye. Jack asked if I was still alive or in heaven with Grandpa. They had been led to believe I was gone, maybe forever. The recommendation was clear. Immediate restoration of the relationship through regular, unsupervised visitation. The final hearing was set. Judge Morrison didn't hesitate. "I am granting Mrs. Hayes's petition in full," she said. "1 weekend per month unsupervised, alternating major holidays, weekly video calls, mandatory family therapy at the parents' expense." Then she added one final order. "You will tell your children the truth." The gavel came down. I sat there, stunned. Janet squeezed my hand. "You won," she whispered. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I believed it. The first visit was scheduled for March 20th. Brad and Kimberly arrived at exactly 10 in the morning. They didn't come inside. They didn't meet my eyes. Their faces were tight, controlled, furious in a quiet way. Dr. Chen had overseen the truth conversation with the children, and according to her report, it hadn't gone well. Emma had cried. Jack had been confused and angry. Both of them now knew their parents had lied. "Be back by 6, Brad said stiffly. "I'll have them back by 7, I replied, just as calmly. "That's what the court order says." Kimberly's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She couldn't. Not anymore. Emma stepped into my house first. She hesitated, her eyes red and swollen, like she'd been crying for days. Jack stayed close to her, his small hand gripping her sleeve. They looked at me the way children look at strangers who feel important but unfamiliar. "Hi, babies," I said softly, kneeling so I was at their level. "I know this is confusing. I know it's been a long time, but I want you to know something very important. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." Emma broke. She ran forward and wrapped her arms around me, sobbing into my sweater. Jack stood frozen for a moment, then stepped in too, pressing his face against my side. I held them both, my hands shaking, my heart finally allowed to breathe again. "Why did they say you moved away?" Emma asked through tears. "Because they made a mistake," I said gently. "A big one, but we're fixing it now." I had planned the day carefully. We baked chocolate chip cookies, the same recipe I'd used when Brad was their age. Jack cracked the eggs too hard, shell fragments everywhere. Emma measured the chocolate chips and stole a handful when she thought I wasn't looking. The kitchen filled with warmth, sugar, and laughter that felt almost unreal. Afterward, I brought out the boxes, birthday cards they'd made me, photos from when they were babies, the quilt I'd sewn for Jack before he was born. Emma touched the cards with careful fingers. "You kept all this?" she whispered. "Of course," I said. "You're my grandchildren. I keep everything." By the time Brad returned, something had shifted. The distance hadn't vanished, but it had cracked. Over the months that followed, a rhythm formed. Every third weekend, Emma and Jack came to stay with me. We went to museums, to the beach, to the little ice cream shop where Brad used to beg for extra sprinkles. We cooked, we read, we worked puzzles on rainy afternoons. Slowly, carefully, I rebuilt what had been stolen. Emma struggled the most. "Why would they lie like that?" she asked one evening as we planted flowers in my garden. She was 11, now old enough to understand betrayal. "Sometimes people make terrible choices when they're afraid of losing control," I said honestly. "It doesn't excuse it. I don't trust them anymore," she said quietly. I didn't argue. Brad and Kimberly paid their own price. Family therapy was mandatory, and Dr. Chen reported resistance, deflection, refusal to accept responsibility. Their relationship with the children became strained and formal. Emma withdrew. Jack grew quiet. The lies they'd built their life on began to crack. Word spread in their community. Invitations dried up. Conversations cooled. Kimberly's mother confronted her about the deception and pulled back her support. Brad's work suffered. He missed a promotion he'd been expecting. Kimberly began drinking more. Emma mentioned it once, casually. "Mom has wine with lunch now." Meanwhile, my life filled again. My house was loud, messy, alive. Emma's artwork covered my refrigerator. Jack's baseball schedule was taped to the wall. I became active in the grandparents' rights community, helping others who were still where I'd once been confused, erased, doubting themselves. One evening, in late summer, Emma and Jack ran through the sprinkler in my backyard, shrieking with laughter. Carol sat beside me on the porch, iced tea in hand. "You did it," she said softly. "You actually did it." "I did," I said. "And I'd do it again." Brad and Kimberly had tried to erase me. They failed. And while they lived with the consequences of their choices, I lived with something far better, my grandchildren. So that's my story. Sometimes you have to fight for the people you love, even when it costs everything. Never let anyone erase you from your family without a battle. What would you have done in my place?